Europe is a continent of carefully drawn borders, mostly finalized after centuries of brutal wars. But if you look at the southeastern corner, the Balkans, the map looks like it was drawn by a very angry toddler. Welcome to the story of Yugoslavia, a country that was born in conflict, held together by sheer willpower, and died in the most catastrophic European conflict since World War II. To understand why it collapsed, we have to look at what it was. The word Yugoslavia literally means land of the South Slavs. After the nightmare of World War I, which literally started in this exact neighborhood, the victorious powers decided to smash a bunch of different ethnic groups into one kingdom in 1918. It was like putting cats, dogs, and birds in the same cage and expecting them to form a band. You had Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, Bosniaks, Macedonians, and Albanians. They had different histories, different alphabets, and followed three different religions: Orthodox Christianity, Catholicism, and Islam. Naturally, the kingdom was a political mess, dominated heavily by the Serbian monarchy. Fast forward to World War II. The Axis powers invaded and chopped the country into pieces. It was a brutal time of occupation and horrific civil war. But from the ashes of World War II, a new Yugoslavia was born, completely redesigned, and the only glue strong enough to hold this impossible puzzle together. Enter Josip Broz Tito. He led the communist partisans to victory against the Nazis and took control of the country. But Tito wasn't your average Soviet puppet. In fact, in 1948, he basically told Joseph Stalin to back off, getting Yugoslavia kicked out of the Soviet bloc. Tito created a unique brand of socialism. His Yugoslavia was a federation made of 6 equal republics: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, and Macedonia. There was a famous saying: 6 republics, 5 nations, 4 languages, 3 religions, 2 alphabets, and 1 Tito. His master policy was called Brotherhood and Unity. Tito suppressed any hint of nationalism. If you talked about being too proudly Serbian or Croatian, you went to jail. Period. For a few decades, it actually worked marvelously. Yugoslavia was the cool kid of the Cold War. They took money from the Americans and the Soviets. Yugoslav citizens had a red passport that let them travel almost anywhere in the world, a luxury unheard of in the Eastern Bloc. The economy boomed. People bought cars, took vacations on the stunning Adriatic coast, and lived together in mixed neighborhoods. Intermarriages between different ethnicities reached all-time highs. Looking from the outside, the Yugoslav experiment was a massive success. But it had one fatal flaw: the entire system was a pyramid balanced perfectly on the shoulders of one man. And men are mortal. On May 4, 1980, Josip Broz Tito died. At his funeral, the whole world showed up, from Western presidents to Eastern dictators. They were mourning Tito, but deep down, they were probably mourning Yugoslavia itself. Because everyone knew what was coming next. To prevent anyone from taking absolute power, Tito had designed a bizarre system, a rotating presidency. The leader of the country would change every single year, rotating among the republics. Imagine a company changing its CEO every 12 months. It was a recipe for absolute paralysis. To make matters worse, the 1980s hit Yugoslavia with a brutal economic hangover. Remember all that foreign money Tito borrowed? The bill came due. The 1979 oil crisis devastated the economy. Unemployment skyrocketed. Inflation went absolutely crazy. We're not talking about a 5% increase. We're talking about inflation hitting 1.000% by the late 80s. People's life savings were wiped out. When the economy crashes, people get scared. And when people get scared, they look for someone to blame. The wealthier republics in the north, Slovenia and Croatia, felt they were being dragged down by the poorer south. Meanwhile, Serbia felt it wasn't getting the respect it deserved as the largest republic. The Brotherhood and Unity posters started peeling off the walls. The glue was gone, and the jigsaw puzzle was starting to crack. Into this atmosphere of fear and poverty stepped politicians who realized that nationalism was a powerful weapon. The most prominent among them was Slobodan Milošević, a rising star in the Serbian Communist Party. In 1987, he visited Kosovo, a province in Serbia with an Albanian majority but deep historical significance to Serbs. Amidst ethnic tensions there, Milošević told a crowd of angry Serbs, "No one will dare to beat you. It was an electrifying moment. Milošević realized that by playing the nationalist card, he could gain absolute power. He started taking control of the media, replacing leaders in other provinces with his loyalists, effectively trying to dominate the Yugoslav voting bloc. This terrified the other republics. Slovenia and Croatia watched Milošević consolidate power and thought, "We need to get out of here fast." By 1990, the Cold War was ending, the Berlin Wall had fallen, and communism was collapsing across Europe. Yugoslavia held its first multi-party elections, and the results were a disaster for unity. In almost every republic, nationalist parties won. The Slovenes and Croats voted for leaders who promised independence. The Serbs voted for Milošević, who promised a strong, centralized Yugoslavia, which essentially meant a Serb-dominated one. The stage was set. The political arguments turned into shouting matches. The shouting matches turned into boycotts. And soon, the politicians would step aside for the generals. On June 25, 1991, Slovenia and Croatia officially declared independence. Yugoslavia was dead. The Federal Army, largely controlled by Serbian officers, rolled its tanks into Slovenia to stop them. But Slovenia was prepared, geographically isolated, and didn't have a large Serb minority. After just 10 days of fighting, the Yugoslav army withdrew. Slovenia slipped out the back door relatively unharmed. Croatia, however, was a different story. Croatia had a large ethnic Serb minority living within its borders, who wanted to remain part of Yugoslavia, or rather, a Greater Serbia. When Croatia declared independence, local Serbs, backed by the Federal Army, rebelled. This wasn't a political dispute anymore. It was all-out war. The conflict in Croatia was brutal. Cities like Vukovar were subjected to massive artillery bombardments, reducing them to rubble. It was the first time Europe had seen such destruction since 1945. Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced. The term, ethnic cleansing, entered the global vocabulary, as armed forces systematically forced people of other ethnicities out of their homes to create purely Serb or purely Croat territories. International diplomats rushed in with ceasefires, but they were broken almost as quickly as they were signed. But as horrific as the war in Croatia was, it was only a prelude, because the fire was spreading south, toward the most complicated piece of the puzzle, Bosnia. Welcome to Bosnia and Herzegovina. If Yugoslavia was a mini-empire, Bosnia was a mini-Yugoslavia. Its population was a deeply intermixed blend of Bosniak Muslims, 44%, Orthodox Serbs, 32%, and Catholic Croats, 17%. You couldn't draw a clean border here without cutting through someone's living room. When Bosnia declared independence in 1992, the Bosnian Serbs, heavily armed by the remains of the Yugoslav army, launched a massive offensive to carve out their own state. The Bosnian War became a nightmare of multi-sided conflict. Neighbors who had attended each other's weddings for decades suddenly found themselves looking through the crosshairs of a sniper rifle. The capital, Sarajevo, was surrounded by Bosnian Serb forces. The Siege of Sarajevo lasted for 1.425 days, the longest siege of a capital city in modern warfare. Civilians were trapped, dodging sniper fire just to get water. The United Nations sent in peacekeepers in blue helmets, but they were given a weak mandate. They could watch the atrocities. They could deliver food, but they couldn't fight back or stop the violence. The complexity of the war baffled the international community, resulting in endless failed peace plans. Villages were burned, detention camps were set up, and the death toll climbed into the tens of thousands. The dream of Brotherhood and Unity had officially become a horror story. By 1995, after years of devastating bloodshed and a shifting military balance, the international community finally decided they'd had enough. Following a series of NATO airstrikes against Bosnian Serb positions, the exhausted leaders of Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia were flown to an airbase in Dayton, Ohio. There, they were essentially locked in a room until they signed a peace agreement. The Dayton Accords ended the Bosnian War, creating a complex, decentralized government that exists to this day. The guns in Bosnia fell silent, but the Yugoslav drama wasn't over. Remember Kosovo, the province where Milošević first played the nationalist card. By 1998, the ethnic Albanian majority in Kosovo had formed an insurgency to fight for independence from Serbia. The Serbian military responded with a brutal crackdown, displacing hundreds of thousands of civilians. Fearing another Bosnia, NATO intervened in 1999, launching a 78-day bombing campaign against Serbia without UN approval. Bombs fell on Belgrade, the capital. Eventually, Serbian forces withdrew from Kosovo, which was placed under UN administration. Yugoslavia, which by now only consisted of Serbia and Montenegro, was a pariah state. Its economy ruined, its infrastructure bombed, and its leader, Milošević, indicted for war crimes. In 2000, the people of Serbia finally rose up and overthrew Slobodan Milošević. He was sent to The Hague to face a war crimes tribunal, where he died before a verdict was reached. The name, Yugoslavia, officially disappeared from the map in 2003, replaced by the State Union of Serbia and Montenegro. But even that didn't last. In 2006, Montenegro voted peacefully for independence. 2 years later, in 2008, Kosovo declared independence, though it remains only partially recognized globally. The jigsaw puzzle had completely shattered. From one nation, 7 distinct entities emerged: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Kosovo. The wars of the 1990s left over 130,000 people dead and millions displaced. The collapse of Yugoslavia is a terrifying reminder of how quickly society can break down. It shows that peace isn't just about drawing lines on a map. It requires strong institutions, a healthy economy, and politicians who choose unity over division. Today, the guns are quiet. Most of the former republics are now either in the European Union or trying to join it, seeking a new kind of brotherhood in a larger European puzzle. But the scars of the 90s run deep, a permanent reminder of the house that Tito built, and the fire that burned it down.